Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for July 31st, 2017. This is Peter Soretta. On today's show, in the mailbag, I'll be giving an app recommendation for a good movie app. And in the feature presentation, we'll be talking to our own Hoai-Tran Bui about the best movies of 2017 so far. First up, let's just jump into the mailbag. Kevin from Florida asks to give a recommendation for a movie-related app that he might not have. And the first one that comes to my mind is the app and website Letterboxd. And that's Letterboxd without an E. So it's letterbox and then d.com. You can find the app in I believe the App Store and probably Google Play. You can rate movies and log movies, and I do that. A lot of people do that. You can follow me at /film on there. But the thing that I probably used it the most for is they have a feature on there called the Watch List, I believe, where you can basically add movies that you want to see to your watch list. So you have kind of a running list of movies that you're kind of excited about. And the cool thing about that is it also has a filter. So you can filter what movies from your watch list are on iTunes or Netflix or Amazon. So when I'm at home with my girlfriend Kitra and we're looking to watch a movie on TV, it's always a struggle to decide what you're going to watch. But I believe Letterboxd has made that process a little bit easier because we can find out what things we were excited about that are available on streaming right now. So that's what I use Letterboxd for. As always, you can submit your question to the mailbox by sending me an email at peter@slashfilm.com. Please include your name and general geographic location so we can mention it on the air in case we use your question. But now, let's move on to the feature presentation. My conversation with Hoai-Tran Bui about the best movies of 2017 so far. I have to disclose that this conversation was actually recorded a couple weeks back when we were just starting up this podcast, so that the quality isn't as good as it is now, and does not include the last few weeks of movies. But I think it's a great conversation nonetheless. HT, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing good. So your top 10 movies of 2017 is much different than everybody else's on the site I've seen thus far. So I think it's the most interesting.
Okay.
And I want to talk some of these over with you.
All right. It sounds like you're getting ready to kind of battle me over these, but
Oh, no. I love the diverse selection here. I think you're the first let's start with 10. I think you're the first to have Colossal on their top 10.
So I really liked Colossal because it was the first movie I'd seen in a while that I really didn't know where it was going as I was watching the film. And I came in sort of expecting this indie comedy meets a supernatural monster movie twist. And I didn't exactly expect it to have this socially conscious message behind it. It's really nice to be surprised by a movie because it's so easy to kind of telegraph films and predict where they're going because, blockbusters are becoming heavily formulaic, as well as just as we become more informed audiences, we see more movies, we know where they're going. And I really like that. I just didn't know where Colossal was going. And it was charming, but it was also, I think, quite incisive.
When this film played at film festivals, it got a huge response, and I feel like I read a couple of those reviews, so I knew what was coming. And I guess the film festival reaction, I think it's much in tune with your reaction of it being very different than your expectations. And I like much of the film. I think the latter third of it, I'm not sure I bought some of the actions of Jason's character, but
yeah. No, I've had that discussion with other people too.
And number 9 on your list, John Wick Chapter 2.
Yeah.
Great action movie, but awesome world building. Why is this on your list?
So I think this is one that definitely overlaps with everyone else. And I actually saw John Wick and John Wick 2 really late. I caught John Wick on cable when it was airing on cable a couple months ago, and then I just streamed John Wick 2 on Amazon when it came on there, and I it definitely exceeded my expectations. So everyone was talking about how it was this tight action film with these gorgeously choreographed pieces that are, recall John Woo. And I was surprised by like how balletic the action sequences were. And yeah, like you said, the world building in John Wick 2 especially is just so impressive. I did not expect that as well, and I thought that I read Jacob's magnum opus piece on John Wick 2, and I really
Jacob
like
Go
that.
Long? No.
Yeah. Yeah, he really went into like the mythological implications of John Wick 2, and I think that it's really cool that we can have an action film such as this that people can read so deeply into, despite it being on the surface very pulpy and very B movie. I don't know. John Wick 2 is definitely one of the most exhilarating and interesting action movies I've seen in like the past decade, I think.
I love how in your piece you call it the Godfather Part 2 of action films.
Yes.
Let's just hope that John Wick 3 isn't the Godfather 3 of action films.
Yeah, hopefully not. But yeah, it's I know that like the Godfather 2 of whatever is a term that's thrown around a lot, but I really feel like it definitely does that because it improves upon the original and really elevates it into being, a classic action film, I think.
Yeah, and number 8 on your list, I feel like this movie is on everybody's list. These are the two constants, is Logan.
So I have not seen many of the Wolverine movies. I've only seen like a part of the first Wolverine solo film. But Logan...
Wait a second. Because I really like Logan a lot, but I always assumed that the emotional payoff of that film really rested on you having a relationship with Hugh Jackman as that character for over a decade, but
Right.
you didn't have that, and you still
No. Yeah, that's why I think the movie is so powerful because I've seen the X-Men films and Logan Wolverine is a really strong part of that ensemble cast. And he does get a lot of the spotlight because he's, a big scene stealer, but I didn't get a lot of the emotional arc that I know people got from watching his solo films. But Logan, despite not coming in with that information, Logan still really hit that mark for me. It was, and I think that's what makes a really powerful film, that it can stand alone apart from the rest of the emotional journey that you've seen in the other films and really just make you cry and make that impact on you. So definitely, I will say though that it wasn't the ending scene that made me cry like most other people did. It was the scene between Charles and Logan in the house. After and
let's be vague
God,
so that we don't completely spoil things, but yeah,
I'll just say the part where Logan says it wasn't me in that heartbroken voice just completely ripped me apart. So yeah, Logan, and I think that Logan really does the Western homage well. So you'll notice that I don't have War for the Planet of the Apes on this list despite having seen it. I think that it's because I saw it so closely after Logan, and they both pull really strongly from these Western inspirations, like the Western genre inspirations, and I think that Logan does it better. So that's why I included it on my list, and I didn't include War for the Planet of the Apes. It just really transcends both the genre that it's inspired from and the genre that it's like in the superhero genre.
I do think it's interesting that we're getting a lot of these superhero movies that are maybe not transcending genre, but they're, just when I thought I might be getting sick of superhero movies, there's, Logan or, Spider-Man Homecoming where it's like a high school movie, or Deadpool where it's R-rated comedy. And it's, it's doing things differently. But for the record, you were totally wrong on War for the Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
Just for the record.
I understand that. I think it's also because I connect more with like the wandering loner Ronin trope of Western films, and that is embodied so well in Logan. So like that is what pushed it over the edge for me.
I get it.
Hmm.
Your next film on your list, number 7, I have not seen yet, and it's on Netflix right now, and it's
Yeah.
Okhta.
Yeah. So I really loved Okja. I know it has a lot of polarizing reactions just because it is so over the top and ridiculous, but I enjoyed it for that. It felt like a
Well, the
E.T.
opening
Steven.
line of your thing makes me want to see
Hmm.
it really badly because you said it
Hmm.
marries a Studio Ghibli wilderness fantasy film with a Steven Spielberg child adventure movie, and that sounds like my perfect movie right there, like
It
that.
is. I'm sorry for interrupting, but yeah, it definitely has all the elements of those things. You can see the sort of socially, the commentary about nature and about corporate greed and everything, and that really draws from Studio Ghibli films. And the whole girl and her super pig story is very reminiscent of E.T., for example. And it's just kind of that and hopped on GMO steroids. So it's like, it's it's very wacky and crazy, but I feel like there's a lot of heart underneath it. And I think that's what's important. And I like Bong Joon-ho a lot. I adored Snowpiercer and I love The Host. And I think that if people go in expecting a serious follow-up to Snowpiercer, then they will get disappointed by Okja. But I think that if you go in with an open mind and just, you know, are open to seeing a movie that is half super pig fart jokes, half really clunky messaging about corporate greed, and half just like a love story between a girl and her pig, you will. It's a lot of halves, but you will enjoy Okja.
Your next film, number 6, I saw at Sundance, and I
Hmm.
really, really dug it. It's Get Out by Jordan Peele, and everybody has fallen in love with this. I mean,
Hmm.
I thought it was very good, but for me, it's a horror movie that, it does what we want movies to do, where it speaks about us as a society and as
Hmm.
humanity, but
Right.
but it's still like just a horror movie, and I feel like some of the horror tropes are horror tropes. Why is this so high up on your list? And I know I'm in the minority here in
So,
saying, it's not amazing, but
mhm,
it has launched him
yeah,
into
you
this.
definitely put him on the map.
Yeah.
Yeah. My friends were actually criticizing me for putting it so low on the list, which I think is
Hmm.
funny compared to what you were saying. Um,
Oh, I'm
but
totally in the minority, so it's
yeah,
no.
no, I really like Get Out, and I like that it's kind of introduced this wave in socially conscious genre movies. I think this one and Colossal definitely have that sort of vein going through it. And what I liked about Get Out is that, it has the horror tropes, but those horror tropes are used in a way that they're not used to distract from the plot, but they're used to add to the plot of how these racial microaggressions are tangible and real and threatening to the main
Yeah.
character. So I like that he uses these horror tropes in a really unique way. So not just in playing into the genre, but using the genre to build up his message, if that makes sense.
That totally makes
Um,
sense.
yeah. And I really like what I like about Get Out too was not only seeing it with an audience, which is definitely added to my experience just because it's so enjoyable. Everyone is whooping and screaming and trying to yell at the screen. But also that there were so many layers to this film, and I keep finding out more details that Jordan Peele added into the film. For example, that like I wouldn't get on the first viewing. For example, the cotton in the chair that Daniel, I think that was his name. Yeah,
Yeah,
is the main
I think
character
so.
that he picks from the chair and he plugs it into his ears. So it was kind of a reference to the cotton picking of slaves, and that was
Hmm.
tied into that as well. So it's like there are a lot of little nuances that I think really add to how well made the film is.
Your number 5 on your list is another film that's on a lot of the top tens on Slash Film, and that is Edgar Wright's Baby Driver. So
Yeah.
why did you like Baby Driver?
I'm a Edgar Wright fan in general. I really love his just mastery of visual comedy and visual action, and he definitely is at his peak in Baby Driver with that. It's so fun to watch, and it's also driven by, as everyone knows, like the soundtrack and how it's organically um, brought into the film through Baby's sort of disability. And yeah, it's some of the like all the characters are just so interesting and fun, especially John Hamm was a huge standout. I didn't expect him to be quite so terrifying, and I think he really sold that role. And I'm actually kind of on the fence about Ansel Elgort. I'm not sure whether I like him or not, but he was really charming in this. I
Really,
love
when I saw him
Spacey.
in this, I was like, I wish he was Han Solo. I've seen quite a few critics criticize Baby Driver for the portrayal of female characters. Did
Yeah, I
you?
mentioned that too. So Lily James definitely gets the short end of the stick. Um, I think this is actually a problem that reoccurs in a lot of Edgar Wright films. He tends to really use his kind of white male protagonist, outsider characters as the focus, and shy and doesn't really give much else to any of the female supporting characters, or really any. He doesn't really have much diversity in his movie as well, but except Baby Driver shows a little bit more diversity. But I've noticed that he doesn't tend to write much for female characters. I think like the best written female character he had was Rosamund Pike's character in World's End. The
Yeah.
World's End, yes. But Lily James was definitely very flat in this movie. Yeah, even the rest of the characters in here, I've never felt really expanded beyond the fun archetype that they were portraying. But I felt like that kind of fed into the kind of movie this was, which was a really cheesy and throwback sort of film to these action heist films of the 70s and the 80s. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It definitely it plays the characters play into what the movie is trying to say. But I do think that this film and Edgar Wright in general has a problem with female characters.
Yeah.
Not that he writes them badly, just that he doesn't write them at all.
And it's funny that you mentioned 80s and 90s. Like, I feel like, and it's great that this movie is doing well because it's a delight and it's a great movie. But I feel like from the marketing, it almost just seemed like a 80s or 90s heist movie that, a disposable heist movie, which that's not
Yeah.
what it is. And it's great that people are finding it. Number 4 on your list is the second of 3 movies I have not seen on your list, and that is It Comes at Night.
I unexpectedly adored It Comes at Night. So I'm not a huge horror fan. I'm actually what you'd say is the opposite of a horror fan. Um, but I have 2 horror movies on my list, which is really surprising. And I just
Colossal might even be a third, technically.
Colossal, yeah, because it's a monster
Maybe.
feature.
Yeah.
But oh my God, It Comes at Night just I wouldn't say it changed my life, but it definitely made an impact. I really loved that it sort of made this commentary on this rise in nihilism that we're seeing in a lot of film and media today, in TV in general. And it kind of brings in the consequences of that nihilistic viewpoint. And it it brings home like how fear and paranoia can be the biggest enemies of humanity, essentially. I don't know. It's hard to explain without spoiling it, but
Yeah, let's not
I
spoil
won't,
it.
yeah, I won't spoil it. But it's not so much a horror movie as it is an anti-horror movie almost, because it doesn't go in for the jump scares or for any traditional horror genre tropes as much as it kind of builds this overwhelming sense of dread throughout the film. And it's this portrayal of like a dystopic, really isolated set piece. And it just, it's a really fascinating sort of meditation on fear and paranoia and how the innate destructiveness of humanity, or how bad humanity can exactly get. And I love those kinds of films that explore that. So It Comes at Night definitely like struck a chord with me in terms of like the themes that it was going for. And Joel Edgerton is amazing in it. Yeah, it's a film that if you go in expecting a horror movie, you will hate it. But because there was a woman
Yeah.
behind me who was like 2/3 of the way through the movie, she was like, I hate this film. But
It was kind of mismarketed, wasn't it?
it definitely was mismarketed. But I think A24 has been doing that. You know, it actually kind of reminds me of the marketing for The Lobster.
Yeah.
And how that was kind of marketed as a sort of dark, quirky, romantic comedy and with a dystopian twist, and in fact turned out to be really harrowing. It Comes at Night has a lot of shades of that. In fact, I would say it's kind of the horror equivalent of The Lobster. But yeah, I loved It Comes at Night a lot.
Number 3 on your list is probably the most surprising film of the summer so far, but not the most surprising film on your list. We'll get to that. That is Wonder Woman. Tell us about why you love Wonder Woman.
So I feel like I've talked about it a lot, both on Slash Film and also Slash Film Cast. But it's very fresh and new, not just because it's so earnest and shows a compassionate and flawed character at its center, but because it has a female character that is able to be flawed and be all of these things and not have to and be at the center of a blockbuster film. It's really amazing just watching the battle scenes in that movie, No Man's Land in particular, and also the beach scene on Themyscira, and just be able to experience for the first time what all the other male audience goers have been experiencing for a while. Just seeing people who look like me and being able to see all these women on screen and just kick ass. And that, for some reason, was a really emotional experience for me because I have never seen a battle scene like that with so many women in one shot. So,
that was awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, I'm not getting emotional over it again, but Wonder Woman for me is like that. I know that it is a flawed film. I know the third act is really clunky and a big mess, but I think the emotional reaction that it draws out of me and what it's doing with its female character, with Diana of Themyscira, really is what makes it a great film.
For sure. And I feel like if the first 2/3 of the movie, if the last third of the movie was as good as the first 2/3 of the movie, it would be in my top 3 as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like the ending is kind of a mess.
So I would argue that it's not even as bad as other third act clunkers. Even, Iron Man, for example, which had a great first 2/3 and then a messy last third.
Yeah.
I think that Wonder Woman isn't like the worst third act I've ever seen. And it had a really interesting message as well. So I think that because of its ambition and its message, it makes it a better film than people are giving it criticizing it for.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a very good superhero film. Number 2 on your list is a movie I fell in love with at Sundance, and I've seen it twice now, and every time I cry. It's a movie called The Big Sick. So why did you love The Big Sick?
I love rom-coms so much, and I miss them being in theaters. I don't think we've had a traditional rom-com in theaters for at least, 5-7 years now. And it's
been
really
a while. It's been like mostly you see like comedies that have a romance subplot tacked on.
Yeah.
Not like a full-on rom-com.
Exactly. You have it's mostly a raunch comedy or an indie comedy, and maybe this romance is there, but it's tertiary. Here in The Big Sick, the romance is front and center, and I love how earnest it is with that plot and with how much it's about that romance. And I like that it wasn't emotionally manipulative, despite it being centered around sort of a sickness. And I do like too that even though it is an indie rom-com, it doesn't fall victim to one of the many trappings of indie rom-coms and trying to make its characters too pathetic or too real. Yeah. I always find that really kind of a bummer with indie rom-coms. They always try to go for this vein of realism and end up making it too depressing. And here, even though it gets in some dark places, it has that undercurrent of optimism that traditional rom-coms have. And also, it's just so encouraging to see a Pakistani man, a Southeast Asian man, at the center of an American rom-com. So that really connected for me as well, just because I always really enjoy when I see stories about Asian Americans or people who are of a third culture, for example, telling their stories on the big screen. Master of None definitely struck a chord with me. The Big Sick did as well. And I enjoy seeing plot lines and stories and characters that reflect my own experiences. And The Big Sick did that, and made me cry, tugged at my heartstrings. I loved it.
Me too. It might be on the top of my list. We'll find out next week.
All right.
Top of your list, though, is a movie I don't think it might not be on anybody else's list. I haven't seen it, I don't think, on anybody else's list. And it's a movie called Your Name. This is an anime, right?
Yes, it's an anime film by director Makoto Shinkai, and it was the biggest animated film of in the box office in Japan. I think it broke box office records over there, and it's definitely deserving of that. So it at first seems sort of like a coming of age schoolyard romance type of film, but it's actually a metaphysical body switch film. So it has all these elements of like the humor that you find in body switch films, and like the sweet first romance of coming of age films. But it also delves into time travel and this metaphysical exploration of loss and love. And I love that kind of stuff. I think if you've seen like my top favorite movies of all time list, I have a lot of time travel movies and movies that deal with movies that deal with like humanity in the face of supernatural obstacles and that kind of thing. And Your Name definitely taps into all of that. And I especially like that this movie really delves into sort of like the tragedy within the mundane. Because it's a slow film. Not much really happens in it until like the last act. But it really kind of just, it lingers and, lets you live with these characters. And I really love like the juxtaposition of the countryside and the bustling city. And you can tell that it's a very uniquely Japanese film in that regard. And I've actually seen some of the other films by the director, Makoto Shinkai. And he's dealt with these themes before, especially in his, I think it was a short film, 5 centimeters per second. And that is one of the most gorgeous animated films I've ever seen. So for 5 centimeters per second, it has a similar plot in that it's these two people who are kind of separated by time and distance. And they have this, as they grow older, they have this yearning in their inside. They have this emptiness that they can't fill because they feel like they're missing something, but they don't know what it is. And it's a very wistful and melancholy feeling. But 5 centimeters
is that short
per second,
film online?
I think it is.
Do you think it is?
It's
Okay,
really beautiful. Yeah. Please do. Your Name is definitely like an expansion of that short film he did, an improvement of it. And that's why it's so lovely. And so it definitely makes you think, which is what I like in films.
Well, it's definitely going to be added to my watch list now. Now, after hearing all that, thanks for joining me on /Film Daily. Where can we find more of your work?
So you can find my work at /film.com. I sometimes guest on /Filmcast, and I also have my own podcast, the Millennial Falcon Podcast. You can find us on SoundCloud or on iTunes.
Very cool. Thanks for joining us, HT.
All right, thank you.
And that does it for today's edition of /Film Daily. Tomorrow we'll be back with the latest news from the world of movies and television. Please, if you're liking this podcast, go to iTunes, give us a review, rate it. If you have some feedback for us, you can always reach us at peter@slashfilm.com.